Hey all, this is Lessie here. I've been a miniature painter for many years. I've never really done YouTube or Instagram before though. So I figured let's jump into the deep end, let's edit a video when we've never edited videos before. This will be my first attempt. So I painted Kritza the Rat Prince. He's pretty fun to play with, so I figured he deserved to be pulled out of the gray pile of shame. So let's get into it, let's have a beer, let's have some fun.
So first YouTube video. Uh, Never done one of these things before. Had a lot of fun with it. Learned a bunch of things. It was pretty difficult. So I'm happy I got to do it with one of my more favorite miniatures. He's Kritza the Rat King. Fun little model to paint. He's basically one just big leg when you assemble him, but at the end of it, it comes out pretty nice. So typically how I go about painting my miniatures, or at least the style that I kind of work with mostly. I do a zenithal primer, so black then white, and I just use contrast paints in my airbrush to kind of get the colors to where they need to be. It's usually a spray them on. If you get overlap, that's fine. Because unless you're being very specific with it, you're probably going to get overlap anyways, so why worry about it? It's just added stress when you don't put color in a place you didn't want to. Why not use it to your advantage and build shadows and highlights and just make it look interesting and different? So what I'm doing here is I have a red, it's a magenta, it's one of the contrast colors. And I'm just putting shadows essentially where I think they should be. I don't really know all that much about color theory, admittedly. I just spray things that look good, and this looks good to me. It adds a certain warmth to the blue that you can really see at the end of the model there. It just makes it pop almost. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So I even put the red on the yellow cloak. Kind of turns it almost like a ruddy brown color, which I think works out really well with Kritza. He's from the sewers. He's gonna have dirty, filthy clothes. He hangs out with rats. Like, it's just fitting. So you can see there that I'm trying to physically target where there is going to be a lot of shadows, where the rats are basically hanging off the model. And here, I've basically gone down most of my base colors and just basically coloring the base at this point. Brown, it's mud, it's muddy cobblestone. This is going to be built between them. Yeah, it's pretty basic. Here I'm doing the candles. They're going to be colored like a bleach bone color at the end of it, but putting down this darker color, particularly when we put the bleach bone on, builds some interesting shadows. It really helps bring them to life. So here with the brown, ultimately I did want to go for pretty lighter hair, and I felt it just worked. It created interesting shadows, it built depth. It was what the model needed, at least in my mind. I think we're pretty close to finishing up the airbrush work here. I'm pretty much just attempting to put some white on the sword for later use. Just kind of help me identify where I need to put the marks on the sword lines. And here, last of the airbrushing, should just be bleach bone on the canvas, like I mentioned. We're just trying to establish those base colors. And as you can see, the brown kind of helps build those shadows. So here, I mean, we're moving on to brush. We had bleach bone in the airbrush. Why not just start picking away at the things we need to build up with that color? We're already using it. Let's just continue. So I don't remember who I heard mention it, some other YouTuber, some other Instagram model painter, but he mentioned drawing things on the miniature to help identify where we want things to go. And that's what I'm trying to attempt here. It's going to be a later stage thing, but we're just trying to define where we want to put those more interesting colors later. And same thing here with the leg. I'm just blocking in the colors. Leech bone again. For some reason, I thought white leggings would look pretty good on him, so we did that. So white with black, classic combination. Uh, Pretty sure he's a fashionable person and would make the fashionable choice. So being that he is supposedly a prince, even a prince of the rats, I felt like I wanted to have a color that is close to what royalty typically wears, or at least back in the past. So I wanted to get some magenta on the model here. It says surcoat, I think the part is called. It's one of the more cloth-like areas that we can kind of get this color. And here we're just picking out the strength of the hair. Trying to be careful. Try not to get it on any of the adjacent areas. And sometimes you really have to be careful when you put down your paints. White here, well, you could wick it off with a wet paintbrush. You could clean it up. It's just easier to be careful at the end of the day. At least I find. So here I'm just making the belt a little bit more metallic, just to set it up for some washes and things later on. And we're just finishing up some minor things. We're just doing handles. I believe we're doing gems here in a few moments. Yep. And yeah, we're just picking up the little things here. We're just giving everything a little bit of color. So as for the face and skin and hands and all that, I wanted to show he was closely aligned to the rats. So I decided to take the contrast I had done with the rats and use it as my skin tone, or at least the base of it. So last little bit of the cloth here. Did miss the armbands, but I wanted to see where everything else kind of lined up. If I wanted to change that, make it different. So we have here, we've established all our base colors. We need to add more shadows, more depth to it. So we used a wash, probably just a null oil equivalent, added with a bit of brown to give everything a little bit of a muddy kind of rundown effect. And I do put this over the whole miniature. I do know in the miniature space, a lot of people say using washes is counterproductive. It's no good. Personally, in my mind, they're a tool, just like anything else. They're fun to use. I can get stuff done quickly with them. There's no shame in it. So now we've let the wash dry for just a little bit. We're just adding more color. Primarily, we're just taking our original color and we're just going over what we've done. This is the way I've always painted. I don't know if anybody would call it something different. I just like to build up what I had existing. It helps make the pop a little bit better. And yeah, how I typically do my highlights and everything is I just add a little bit of white to whatever color. I slowly build it up layer by layer. I like to keep things simple, particularly when I'm doing a model quickly. Um, I don't care much for a lot of these three color systems. I've never personally really used many of them. I feel like you're buying a lot of unnecessary paint there. You can make your own paints just by combining blacks and whites and everything. With one-off models like this, it's perfectly fine. Maybe it'd be a bit different if you had a larger project, but I like this. So I keep doing it. And as you can see here, just slowly a little bit of whites added here and there. Little key strategic places. They help make the model work. They help make it live. They help make it breathe. It's the highlights that really give your model the characteristic and the stuff that we love to see on the battlefield. And notice how I'm very careful there. I'm trying to not cover all of my pre-existing paint. I'm just adding small bits here and there. So we're pretty much done with the royal colors, I'm fondly call it from here. We're moving on to his rats, and the rats are a big part of the Kritza model, at least I feel. So we want to give them a little bit more love, a little bit more highlights. So I spend quite a bit of time on this part. As you can see with the black wash, with the purple that I put in the shadows, there's a lot going on there. It really helps you work on the model, get things to where you feel like they should be. It's almost like sketching the model out, is what some miniature painters might call it. It works, it helps. It's little things to make the whole piece. And I just like doing it. It's fun, it's relaxing. You just keep adding little bits of white. You build it up. And as you can see, like, I'm not spending a ton of time on each individual model. I'm not trying, or not model area. I'm not trying to artfully blend in my colors. We're just using what we have with our little highlights to draw and sketch on the model. Now here's where you really start seeing the impact of adding little bits of white, bringing it up slowly bit by bit. The fur is really starting to take shape here. This admittedly was one of my more favorite parts of working on the model. It's being undead, you don't get to paint much fur. And fur is fun to paint, it's just enjoyable. And it's always been enjoyable. Just picking out those little strands, bringing life to the model. And here you can see the big jump where things are kind of almost all in place. So now that we're done with the rats, we're moving on to the candles. And as I mentioned before, we had previously sketched on where we wanted some of our highlights to go. And we're trying to make the flow and the liquidness, for lack of a better term, on the candles show up here. And it's just little pieces, little things, little bits added white. Because personally, like with these three color coding systems, they're nice to have. You don't have to do any of these little added layers. You have it all in one pot. But it feels like there's less of a connection with them all. It doesn't feel like you've made something more unique with your colors. And with here, you can control everything. You control how white you want it to look, how dark. You're not stuck in one color scheme. Or a 3-hue bit of color schemes, I suppose. So here we're just picking out the tails. And now we're moving on to the belt. So I typically put on grays and things over the metallic finish I had. I put some yellow wash on it, same color that I used for the cloak. After it's dried, I will end up highlighting it here to try and give it that like non-metal finish that you see in a lot of miniatures. And once again, this is just added white. It's nothing fancy, it's just simple. Moving on to the black leggings, there's many different ways of painting black. I find that this way works best for me. It might not be the best way, but I think it looks alright. So here's an area I spent a little bit of time on. Now the hair is naturally hundreds of strands knit together to make a thing, and that's difficult to portray on models sometimes. So you really have to go back and forth between the white and the brown and whatever your inner colors are to try and pick out those effects. And moving on to the sword, we're trying to put some white hard edge highlights on where we had picked out before with our airbrush. We're trying to give the steel some depth, some flex. Like make it look more than just a hunk of steel. So this is probably one of my more favorite parts of painting miniatures with big cloaks. There's another YouTuber, he goes by the name Marco, and I watched a video of his years ago where he had done this on some rats, I think. And all you really do is you take your main color and you make it brighter, and then you just start sketching and scratching over the whole thing. And it's almost mindless. You're just putting marks on something you've put depth in before with your airbrush and your washes and all that. And giving it life. Gives it almost like a cloth texture. And it's just enjoyable. Like, you can put on a podcast here. You can just put your marks and your scratches down. Go. I highly recommend watching his videos if you've never seen them. He's a pretty good painter. Definitely somebody I look up to. So here we're just picking out his white leggings. More bleached bone at this point, but I think at the end of it all, it actually really works well. It looks like maybe, in my mind, something that used to be white just got sullied by the sewer that he constantly lives in. It's not as clean as it once was. So painting faces for me, at least vampire skin tones, has always been a little difficult, and this model I'm particularly happy on getting that skin tone down correctly. It's difficult to portray something that you don't see every day, at least in my mind, where you're trying to make up the skin tone of some undead beast that's been dead for centuries. And here I don't do the typical just add white. Once again, it is that contrast pink color that I had, but I added bleached bone because it gives a little bit more warmth than just a pure white would do. But still the same, we're just building up highlights. So now that we're done the face, we're just moving on to little things, making the gems pop. The main miniature is done, and here we're just trying to get the face finished. It's pretty late in the morning at this point, and I just wanted it done. So we're just doing a quick dirty dry brush over the cobblestones, and taking our brush and trying to make the lights work on the candles. Now, the thing I always recommend when you do these light effects with candles or torches, whatever have you, try and get a little bit of color on the miniature. It makes it feel more alive. It makes it feel like it's part of the scene that it's actually on the base for. So now that we're done, our favorite thing to do is just blacker the base. And then here we have Kritza. So if you've been with me this whole time through this video, I can't help but thank you for watching. I'm planning on doing more of these. It's my first one after all. And I hope you can continue on through this painting journey with me. More projects on the way. If you could like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. Thanks for watching.